When I was 12, my best friend Josh vanished after a sleepover at my house, and no one ever found out what happened to him. That was nearly 20 years ago, but even now, the memory still finds me, sometimes late at night, when the house is silent and I'm alone with my thoughts. I tried to convince myself I'd left it all behind, but last week, I accidentally broke a wall panel in my old bedroom, and stumbled onto a hidden room filled with Josh's belongings. I never told anyone about the strange noises we heard that night, and now, I'm wondering if they're connected to what I just found. I'll reveal what was really inside that room, and why my family kept it secret for so long. I drove up the narrow, tree-shaded street to my childhood home, my hands gripping the steering wheel a little too tightly. The old maple in the front yard was bigger now, but the house itself, yellow siding, green shutters, looked exactly the same. Windows stared blankly back at me, and the porch creaked beneath my feet as I walked up. Paint peeled around the doorframe, and the air was thick with the scent of cut grass and the faint, sweet tang of honeysuckle. I paused at the threshold, remembering all the times I'd raced inside as a kid, never thinking I'd one day return with this knot in my stomach. Inside, dust motes danced in the sunlight slanting through the windows. The living room was a patchwork of half-packed boxes, old family photos stacked precariously on the piano. My mom was in the kitchen, sorting through cabinets with a determined frown. She looked up as I came in, her smile a shade too bright. "Hey, you made good time," she said, wiping her hands on a towel. There was a brief, awkward pause. "Thanks for coming to help, honey." I shrugged, trying to sound casual. "Of course. Can't let you face this battle alone, right?" She laughed, but I could see the tiredness in her eyes. The house was heavy with echoes, every corner holding some memory, some old argument or late-night secret. As we worked side by side, I noticed how she kept glancing toward the hallway, toward my old room. We didn't talk about it, but the unspoken tension hung in the air, thick as the dust. Halfway up the stairs, my foot caught on the worn carpet, and I stopped, listening. The house creaked, settling around me. Sometimes, I imagined I could still hear Josh's laughter echoing up from the den, or the two of us thundering down the stairs in sock feet, racing for the last slice of pizza. But mostly, the house felt empty, like it was waiting for something. I was 12 the night Josh disappeared. We'd spent the whole afternoon playing video games and raiding the pantry for snacks, gummy worms, microwave popcorn, cans of root beer that fizzed over our hands. That sleepover was supposed to be legendary. Movies till midnight, a blanket fort that took over half the room, and whispered stories about the ghost in the attic, a joke we'd invented to scare each other. But even as we laughed, there was this weird undercurrent. Just after midnight, when the rest of the house was asleep, Josh suddenly sat up, his face pale in the blue glow of my nightlight. "Did you hear that?" he whispered. I'd heard it too, a faint tapping, like something brushing against the wall behind my bed. I remember the way my skin prickled, a cold shiver running down my spine, but I tried to play it off. "Probably the pipes," I whispered back, forcing a grin. But Josh didn't look convinced. The tapping got louder, then faded away. We stayed awake for hours, barely breathing, listening to the creaks and sighs of the old house. At some point, I drifted off. When I woke up, sunlight was streaming through the window, and Josh's sleeping bag was empty. At first, I thought he was in the bathroom or downstairs getting breakfast. But when I found his shoes still by the door, his jacket draped over the chair, the panic set in. My mom called his parents. The police came, searching the house from top to bottom. Neighbors walked the streets, shouting his name. They found nothing, not a single clue. For weeks, the whole town buzzed with rumors. Some said he'd run away, others whispered about kidnappers. My parents kept close watch over me. I barely slept, haunted by the memory of that tapping and the look on Josh's face before he vanished. The guilt gnawed at me. What if I'd paid more attention, done something different? The house changed after that. My parents stopped having people over. My mom grew quiet, my dad always distracted. I felt like a ghost in my own home, retracing those final steps with Josh, wishing for a do-over that would never come. Now, standing in my old bedroom, I found myself staring at an old cardboard box shoved into the back of the closet. The tape was yellowed, the corners crumpled. I hesitated, then pulled it out, dust puffing up in my face. Inside were comic books, a plastic flashlight with Josh's initials scratched on the side, and a friendship bracelet I thought I'd lost. My chest tightened. For a moment, it felt like Josh might walk back in, grin splitting his face, and laugh about how he'd tricked me all these years. I blinked hard and turned toward the hallway, finding my mom watching me from the doorway. I found some of Josh's things, I said quietly. From that night. She nodded, her jaw working like she was chewing her words before she spoke. I kept them. I thought, maybe it would help, someday. I wanted to ask why. Why she never told me, why we never talked about that night. But something in her eyes stopped me. It was guilt, or maybe fear. There's a lot we never talked about, she said softly, the words hanging between us like smoke. I swallowed, feeling the old ache settle in, heavier than ever. I had a sense, almost like a warning, that I was finally about to uncover what everyone else had tried so hard to bury. And that's when I heard it, a faint, familiar tapping from inside the wall behind my bed. I froze, the box slipping from my hands, heart hammering. For the first time since that night, I wondered if I was really ready to know the truth. You know that feeling when a memory just sits under your skin for years, without ever quite letting go? That's how it was, every time I walked into my old bedroom. Even as an adult, the air in there felt thicker, like the walls themselves remembered something they couldn't say. I came back to help my mom clear out the house. She was moving into a condo, and we couldn't avoid it any longer. That room, with its faded blue wallpaper and the scratch marks on the closet door, felt frozen in time. But I swear, I didn't expect anything new to happen. Not after all these years. We'd piled boxes everywhere, and I was hauling a heavy dresser across the floor, one of those ugly, blocky things my dad insisted on keeping. My foot slipped on a stray marble, and the whole dresser lurched sideways. The sharp screech echoed off the floorboards. When I tried to steady it, my elbow slammed into the wall. Hard. There was a cracking sound, dull and soft, like snapping driftwood. I looked down, half expecting to see a new bruise, but my attention caught on something stranger. Right where the dresser had stood for decades, the wood paneling was trembling. I pressed my fingers to it out of curiosity. It flexed under my touch. I pushed harder. The panel gave way completely, breaking off with a clatter. Behind it, I saw darkness, a hollow that wasn't supposed to be there. The edges were rough, unfinished wood. The smell that drifted out was old and sharp, like dust mixed with something else. Not quite mold, not quite rot, almost metallic. The hair on my arms prickled. For a long second, I just stared at it, chest tight, feeling a weird pulse of childhood fear. All logic said it was a crawl space or some old insulation. But I reached for my phone and flicked on the flashlight anyway. The beam caught on what looked like a narrow passage. My heart hammered. I couldn't stop myself. I crouched, took a deep breath, and squeezed in. Inside, the air was cold and unmoving. Dust floated like tiny ghosts. The walls were unfinished, rough to the touch, splintery. My knees scraped as I crawled. About 5 feet in, the space widened into a cramped, boxy room, not much bigger than a walk-in closet. The beam of my phone trembled as I aimed it around, my breath loud in the stillness. A musty smell, layered with something chemical, filled my nose. There was no window, just a single, ancient flashlight on the floor and a pile of rumpled blankets in the corner. The strange thing was, the blanket was the same faded red plaid one Josh always brought to sleepovers. I froze, feeling like I'd stepped onto thin ice. There was a backpack propped against the wall, its side pocket stained with something sticky and brown. Josh's initials, JL, were written on it in black Sharpie. My hands started to shake. I knelt, running my palm across the cold, gritty floor, and unzipped the backpack. Inside, I found a folded class photo. Our 6th grade faces smiled back, arms slung around each other, me, Josh, and 2 other friends. There was a pack of gum, dried out and rock hard, and a stack of crumpled notes, written in Josh's handwriting. I closed my eyes and could almost hear him again, whispering ghost stories in the dark. My heart twisted. I thumbed through the notes, each one a scrap of lined paper, torn at odd angles. They were strange, though, nothing like the silly jokes and sketches Josh used to pass me during class. These were messy, rushed. Some lines just said, "Let me out," or, "I hear it." Others were more desperate. "Please come back," and, "Is anyone there?" Suddenly, I heard footsteps upstairs. My mom's voice, muffled and distant. "Are you okay down there?" She sounded annoyed, not worried. I shoved everything back into the backpack, throat tight, and crawled out, scraping my shoulder against the rough wood. I barely noticed the dust on my jeans or the way my hands shook as I stood up. "Mom," I called, my voice raw. "Can you come here? You need to see this." She appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, face pinched with impatience. "What's wrong? Did you break something?" That's when I held up the broken panel and gestured to the gaping hole behind it. "Have you ever seen this before? There's a whole room back here. And, I hesitated, holding up the backpack. This is Josh's. You remember Josh, right? For a second, her expression didn't change. Then her eyes flicked to the hole, and she paled. Put that back, she said quietly, but her voice shook. You shouldn't go in there. I stared at her, something bitter rising in my chest. Why not? Mom, what is this? Did you know about it? She pressed her lips together, jaw tight, and shook her head. It's nothing. It's just storage. We never used it. I told your father it was a bad idea. I stepped in front of the opening, blocking her view. A bad idea for what? Why is Josh's stuff in there? She wouldn't meet my eyes. You're upsetting yourself for no reason. That room was never meant to be found. Just close it up, okay? Some things are better left alone. Her words hit me like a slap. I could hear my own blood in my ears. You can't just say that, Mom. He's gone. He vanished from this house. And you're telling me there's a secret room with his stuff in it, and I should just forget it? Her facade cracked. She looked exhausted, suddenly older. Please don't do this, she whispered. I tried to protect you. We tried to protect everyone. My voice came out sharp. Protect us from what? From the truth? She squeezed her eyes shut, took a shaky breath. Your father built that room. It was supposed to be a panic room, like you see in movies. He worried about break-ins, about everything. We kept it secret so no one would look for it. I pressed the backpack to my chest. So what happened to Josh? Why was his stuff in there? She turned away, rubbing her forehead. That night, when you kids heard the noises, your father and I panicked. We thought someone was in the house. Josh was in the hallway, and we shoved him in there, just to be safe. Your father said he'd go back for him once we figured out what was going on. But when we checked the next morning, we thought he'd left. The panel was back in place. His parents thought he'd run away. I stared at her, mouth dry. You never told anyone? Never checked? Her voice cracked. We thought he was gone. I swear, we never meant for. She stopped, wrapping her arms around herself. You're not supposed to know any of this. The room seemed to tilt. I could barely breathe. So you just forgot about him? You never wondered why his stuff was missing? Tears streaked her face. We were scared. Your father, he made me promise never to talk about it. We thought it was safer. We were wrong. My anger felt like it might choke me. I stormed back toward the hole in the wall, ignoring her pleading voice. I needed answers. I needed proof. I crawled back inside, phone in one hand, heart thudding. The darkness pressed close around me. I shone my light over every inch of the little room, searching for anything I'd missed. The blanket, the backpack, a broken pencil. I pressed my hands to the floor, feeling for loose boards or hidden compartments. My fingers caught on something wedged behind a support beam, a battered spiral notebook, the cover torn. I flipped it open, squinting at the writing. It was Josh's handwriting, shaky and frantic. There were dates, scratched in the margins. Some matched the days after he went missing. The words on the first page made my stomach drop. I can hear them moving. Please come back. I'm scared. The pages after that grew more desperate. No one is coming. The door won't open. It's dark. Please, please. On the last page, the ink was smeared, as if written with trembling hands. If anyone finds this, I'm still here. Please don't leave me. I dropped the notebook, my vision swimming. I ran my hands over the walls, looking for any sign of how he might have tried to get out, scratches, dents, anything. Near the corner, I found what looked like nail marks, dug deep into the soft wood. My hands shook as I traced them. There was no sign Josh had ever left. Suddenly, I heard a floorboard creak behind me. My mom's voice, muffled, "Please, honey. Come out." I squeezed my eyes shut, pressing my forehead to the cold wood. The room felt smaller by the second, as if the walls were closing in around me. My chest ached. I wanted to scream. I crawled backwards, dragging the notebook and backpack with me. When I emerged, my mom was crying, her face streaked with mascara. "You don't understand," she sobbed. "We thought we were doing the right thing. Your father was so scared." I stared at her, barely able to speak. "You left him in there. You left my best friend." She reached out for me, but I stepped back. My mind raced. There were still so many things I didn't know, so many pieces that didn't fit. If Josh was locked in, why didn't anyone hear him? Did my parents really never check? I looked down at the backpack, the notebook, the desperate words scratched into the paper. My hands curled into fists. No matter how much I wanted to believe my mom, the evidence felt overwhelming. Maybe the room was just supposed to be a safe place. Maybe it was all a terrible mistake. But deep down, something told me there was more to the story, something my mom still wasn't telling me. And as I stared into that gaping, dark hole in the wall, I realized I might be the only one who could finally bring the truth to light. But if I kept digging, what else would I find? I had to know, even if it changed everything I thought I knew about my family and about myself. I barely slept that night, knowing what waited for me in the morning. My mother's voice was low and tight when she called me down to breakfast, but her eyes gave her away, red-rimmed, exhausted, like she'd carried this secret for years. The kitchen felt smaller than ever, sunlight slanting through the blinds and catching on the dust that floated between us. I sat across from her, my hands clenched around a mug of coffee that I couldn't bring myself to drink. "We need to talk," I said. She looked up, face blank at first. "About what?" I pushed the photograph across the table, the one I'd found tucked in the crack between floorboards, Josh in his favorite blue hoodie, grinning at the camera. "You know what? The room, Josh. All of it." Her hand shook as she reached for the picture, but she didn't pick it up. Instead, she let out a sharp breath. "I told you everything I knew," she said. "There's nothing." "There's everything," I interrupted. "You told me you never saw anything that night, but I remember the sounds. The voices. You were scared. Why?" For a moment she just stared at the photograph, her knuckles white against the edge of the table. The house was silent except for the faint tick of the clock on the wall. "It was supposed to stay buried," she whispered. "Your father, he thought it was the only way to keep us safe." "To keep you safe? Safe from what?" My voice cracked. The floor felt uneven under my feet, like I was standing on loose boards. She looked up finally, her eyes swimming with tears. "We knew Josh was missing, but, that morning, after you kids slept, your father found signs. The wall panel was open. There was blood. He said it would destroy us if anyone found out what happened in this house. So he closed the room. We told the police we didn't know anything." I felt my stomach drop. "You let his family spend years wondering." Her shoulders shook. "I'm sorry," she said, and her voice broke. "I should have done something. But I was terrified." I stood up, heart racing. I didn't know if I was angry or just numb. I only knew that what happened next could never be taken back. "We have to call the police," I said. "They deserve to know." She nodded, silent tears streaking her cheeks, and went to pick up the phone. It happened quickly after that. Patrol cars arrived, blue lights splintering across the familiar driveway. I watched from the porch as officers in crisp uniforms ducked under yellow tape and disappeared through my bedroom doorway. The house, so full of memories, seemed to shrink in on itself, every shadow lengthening beneath their flashlights. A detective asked me to walk them through what I'd found. My hands trembled as I led them to the hidden door, the air inside that tiny space stale and cold. Dust drifted in the narrow beams of their torches as they catalogued every object. Josh's sneakers, his flashlight, a crumpled note in the corner. One of the officers handed it to me in a clear evidence bag. "Do you want to read this?" she asked gently. I nodded, my throat tight. The words were shaky but unmistakably his. I heard them fighting again. "I just want to go home. If you find this, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hide, I just wanted it to stop." His last words blurred as my hands shook. It all snapped painfully into focus. Josh hiding in the crawl space, afraid of the grown-ups' voices, too scared to call out. My parents, panicked, closing up the room before anyone could look. Nobody meant for it to end this way, but the choice to keep it secret changed everything. As the officers moved in and out, cataloging evidence, I stood in the doorway to my old room. The familiar creak of the floor under my feet felt different now, like the house was exhaling secrets it had held far too long. After they left, my mother and I sat in the living room, silent. She reached out, her hand hovering over mine. "I know it's not enough," she said quietly, "but I am sorry. For all of it." I squeezed her hand, unsure what forgiveness looked like in this moment. The sun was setting, orange light catching on the faded wallpaper. I realized then that sometimes guilt and forgiveness exist side by side, tangled and impossible to separate. The next morning, movers arrived. I watched as they carried out boxes and old furniture, my childhood slipping away one cardboard box at a time. The house felt empty, but lighter, as if letting out a long-held breath. Josh's family came by to speak with the detectives. His mother hugged me tightly, tears soaking through my shirt. "Thank you," she whispered. "We never stopped hoping someone would tell us the truth." As they drove away, I stood on the porch, looking at the shell of the house that had shaped my life. The secrets were out now, raw and painful, but there was a strange peace in finally knowing. For years, I'd wondered what happened to my best friend. Now I know. And though the answers hurt, they're better than the silence. As we closed the door for the last time, I promised myself I'd never let darkness grow in secret again. Sometimes, closure doesn't heal old wounds, but it lets light in anyway.